So hello and welcome to Out of India Theory. Hope you guys are doing well. My guest for today's podcast is somebody that I found sort of very difficult to introduce in the beginning because she's done so many different things and she wears so many different hats. But I think the easiest way to introduce her would be to call her a researcher of consciousness. And she's somebody who has spent decades in areas of leadership consulting, emotional intelligence, resonant technology, extraterrestrial and interdimensional sentient intelligences. She is the president of New Energy Movement. She's also an author. She's a co-author of Hidden Energy, Tesla-inspired inventors, and a mindful path to energy abundance. And she was also a contributor, along with Dr. John Climo, to this book called Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. And she also was a participant in the peer group, which is the Program for Extraordinary Experience research group at Cambridge, Massachusetts, under none other than Dr. John Mack. And also she is a lifelong contactee and experiencer herself with her own experiences with non-human intelligences. So Susan Manewich, thank you so much. An absolute pleasure to have you on the channel. How are you doing?
I'm doing good this morning. It's morning time for me. I don't even know what time it is for you.
It's almost 9. It's 8:45.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's
We're
end of
holding
the day. I'm winding up. It's a weekend,
time.
so it's a great time to be chatting about non-human intelligences.
Exactly. We're holding two ends of the spectrum. I have a feeling we'll do that during the call today too.
Right. I want to start off because I know that you have a lot of views on this topic and it's something that you're talking about, is what is happening with the world right now? You know, the state of the world right now.
Mm.
So I kind of want to get your opinion on that, and then we can move on to your own personal experiences with these beings, if you want to call them. Based on my own experience and the people that I talk to here, there is a
Mm.
sort of a sense of a sort of a grim foreboding, you know, like there's something about to happen, like there's something imminent, and almost like we're sort of descending into more and more chaos, and things are breaking down, and there's going to be a huge shift. And I know
Mm.
that this is something that you talk about a lot. So,
Mm.
do you want to tell us about that first?
Sure. I think that's a great lead in because that's what's on a lot of people's minds, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, my sense, so I guess there's research and then there's my sense, and I'll talk a little of both, right? So it does appear that we are in a space and time that this veil that we've lived under is really, being revealed, being ripped off, thinning, whatever you want to call it. And because of that, I think things that were lying under we call it the subconscious or lying under the surface is now being kicked up. It's being charged. Even this week alone, we've had significant solar storms. We had a couple of X-class. The sun is a very large part. The sun is this incredible being.
Right.
The earth is this, right? It's an incredible being. And it's been quiet over these last several months in terms of large scale activity. In this past week, that large scale activity really kicked up. And that can kick up a lot of things within people. It can make people feel really destabilized. It can make people feel emotional. And so we're feeling all these different things, but our brain doesn't necessarily know how to process it the way that it did last week, right? Or even yesterday. And so I do think that part of this shift and change, and I am actually studying this in a PhD program right now, because I think it's so important that we have an astute understanding of what may be going on with these changes that you're talking about.
Right.
And so part of it is that, I mean, one of the things that we do know is we know that the Earth has this it's called a magnetosphere around the planet, and that does seem to be thinning or waning. And there's science in regards to that, but it's one of the reasons that, especially here in North America, we saw such large-scale auroras. I mean, we're seeing auroras as far south as Mexico, and sorry, I geek out on these things, and it may have even gone further south than than Mexico. I didn't get that validated yet, but the point is that that's signaling this shift and change. The auroras are so beautiful, there's no doubt about that. But it's signaling a really large scale shift on our planet as it relates to the sun's position in the cosmos. And so, part of this could be a compression, call it entropy, if you want
Right.
to. But there's this sense that things are shifting and things are changing, and I think that we can feel that, right? And conversely, it doesn't necessarily mean that things are as grim as we keep being told. I think if we understand that many indigenous people all around the world, and I just actually had a conversation with somebody, and I put it up on my Substack account recently, that he works with indigenous elders in Mexico. It works with the Mayan elders that are in Mexico, and one of the things that they said is, really the next several years is going to be, a bit of a ripple that we'll be experiencing. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of times. It's just going to be a bit of a more challenging period. And that actually does tie to some of the research with the Beyond UFOs book, The Science of Consciousness and Contact. So I just want to say, it's real in terms of what people are feeling. We're feeling heightened energies. We're feeling heightened emotions. We don't necessarily know how to make sense of all of these things at times, right?
Right.
And it's also, having the courage to just put one foot in front of the other. And some days, there's this saying, some days you may just chop wood and carry water, like
Yeah.
you may not be doing something grand, but if you can just do that, that's the mantra, that you'll be okay if we can just, do those pieces. I can add so much more to this, but maybe that's a great place to start.
Right. But in your opinion, why is this happening? Like, so we acknowledge that this churning and this dredging up of internal, energies and everything is happening. But so one way of looking at it, of course, would be purely in scientific terms, like with the solar, the coronal mass ejections and the weakening of
Yep.
the magnetic field,
Yep.
like purely like a physiological, biological process maybe. But then
Uh-huh.
on the other hand, what I'm used to here from a more sort of spiritual point of view is the path that humanity is going down to, sort of a like an accumulation of a lot of abuse of nature and environment and disrespect and sort of a breaking down of morality and things like that. So at
Yes.
some point, it's like a fall of civilization. So that kind of takes on a different. Where do you stand on that? Is it purely global warming, or is it something else? Are beings angry with us, or Earth as an organism angry with us and is going for a purge?
Well, that's interesting that you say that. I think that this is, I wouldn't say it's global warming. And what I mean by that, that's part of the elders, the indigenous elders are not going in that direction, at least the ones that I've been relating to in terms of this information. But what we really have is a disconnection we have a disconnection with nature, as human beings. Part of our job by living and being here, and we forgot, is that we're stewards of this planet. We're stewards of respecting the life force, obviously within ourselves, to one another, to human being to human being, to human being to animal, right? To animal, human being to plant, to the air, to the ether. It's that respect for the life force on that micro level, call it, microvita, right? Like it's this respect for that life force, and that's one of the things that seems to be challenged. Now, what I will share with you is, and this is getting a little bit into some of my contact experiences, if that's okay, because
Yeah.
so much of what I know is framed on these things, and if I can do that, I think that'd be helpful.
Oh yeah, it's perfect because I was gonna sort of segue into that. So please, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I remember I'm one of these people. I don't know if you came across this when you're doing research. Um, I'm one of these people that I remember my before I incarnated in. Like, I have memory and just always had it. It's not like I discovered it when I was 30 or something. No, like I knew it when I was a baby. I remember my connection to source. And I remember the choice of coming here meaning coming into a body. And the original instructions that I had was, your job is to understand how they live on this planet. So I always knew that I was here for a purpose. Ever since, I was in a little body. And I remember a lot of detail with that. I remember the beings I was connected to. I remember an extreme ecstasy and joy of leaving where I was in order to activate to I don't want to say work on behalf of the creator, because it's not like it was some type of subordinate. It sounds strange. Just part of the creator, right? Like there was a purpose here. And so, when I grew up, my family was not spiritual. My family was not even religious. They were very connected to nature, though. I would say my parents, if that was one thing that they really had, and they loved me. Like, I always felt love from them. And so, I share that because being able to kind of frame these things and understand, who you are and what's going on. But I always knew that I was here for a purpose. And I've had ongoing contact my whole life. And it's not just, these different beings and light ships. That's part of it. But also have had some really profound Tibetan Buddhist experiences, inner earth experiences, and a whole host of other things that has led me to have great appreciation and respect for the Vedas, for Hinduism, for Buddhism, and for honestly for certain parts of Christianity. More of the
esoteric, the esoteric part of it. I mean, not just.
Yes. The less dogmatic, less prescriptive, but more of those fundamental elements, and obviously a massive reverence and respect for natural forces, for the earth, the sun, the cosmos. And the reason why I'm bringing that piece up, so for me, it was baked in the cake, as a saying that we have here in the States. It was baked in the cake that I was here for a purpose. And it's not been exclusively one purpose. It's been a number of different purposes as it relates to, I would say, myself continuing to evolve, but helping other people to move on that continuum as well. In one of my contact experiences, I worked with a doctor on this, astrophysicist. His name is Dr. Rudy Shield, because I was getting these things when I was quite young, which was part of the relationship to the program for extraordinary experiences that was with Don Mack at Harvard, Dr. Mack, that was at Harvard. And so I met Rudy through that. But I was getting these beings that were showing me basically what was going to happen cosmologically. And it wasn't so much about like what's happening here on Earth per se. It was what was going on in the cosmos. And one of the things that they showed me, honestly, over like 20 years. So it's been this evolution of showing me this, was that the cosmos is going through a change, that there's a condensement of energy, and there's a birthing of a new universe. And I know that may sound, really strange. And I haven't talked to, I talk about this little bit on and off over these many years. And I also try not to have attachment to it, right? Because this is something that I was shown, I was seen, but, you also have, as a person, being, to not have attachment to what you've been shown, even though it's wild and it's grand. But I understood that there was this condensement of life force in order for something to birth, and that was one of the things that I was shown. So it's almost like this entropic process for this birthing to occur. And so that's why you will hear, I'm sure you maybe hear where you are, people talk about the new earth, right? Or they talk about, this new space, this epoch of time that we were in. And even
the yugas.
There you go. You read my mind. Yes. The yugas that, we're finishing one cycle and, moving into the other. So as one's coming down, the other's coming up. And so that very much has made sense to me. And I will also share that I do have innate memory of past lives. And again, try not to have attachment to it, but I've met people in my day-to-day world that, I've experienced these things with previously. And I've always come to the planet when there's a big transition point occurring. And that's just, where I'm at. So my sense is this, is you've got entropy and syntropy, just kind of using terms that maybe people make more
Yeah.
sense. You've got this condensement and this expansion happening at the same time. It's not all this crunch down. I think it's a little crunch down, a little pop up, a little crunch down, a little pop up. And going back to the research in the Beyond UFOs book, so we, back in 2018, it was published in 2018, but the research started around 2014, 2015. Myself, other colleagues, Dr. John Klima was one, Dr. Rudy Shield was the other, and then Ray Hernandez was really the big leader on that research, really wanting this to get done. But we interviewed about 5,000 people that claimed that they had some type of experience that was considered extraordinary, whether it was a being from a different place in the universe, or it was some strong spiritual connection where they felt compelled that there was something in them that shifted and changed. And about, those 5,000 people all said something very similar. They said that, and I look at, what are the strong similarities here? They said that the planet is changing, and keep in mind this was published in 2018. Here we are, 2025. The planet is changing. What is absolutely critical is that we learn love, and that sounds so basic, right? That we learn love, we learn how to be calm, we learn how to be intelligent, like with our actions, we learn how to manage our emotions, and we learn how to understand how our emotion and intention influence the world around us. And there, I mean, that to me was like, that was the big thing, that we're going to be going through some big upheavals. We're going to be going through some big times. Those aspects that I just mentioned are really critical to helping us to move through this. And so I know I can talk a lot more about that, but, so you see all these little things that are like, trust me, when I was like 18 years old or 20 years old, I'm like, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're like, what do you do with all of this? Like, I just want to be get a job and like, figure out how to buy a house someday, have children, And so like it has slowly come to make sense, and even, I would say more rapidly come to make sense of why this is so important, and it directs what I do on a daily basis now.
No, I can just imagine when you say that as a young person, to know that you arrived on Earth on a mission. It's like, imagine asking kids and they say, I want to be an astronaut and I want to be this and I want to be a doctor, and like, I want to save the world, like it'd be like, it's like, yeah.
I wouldn't say save the world. I'd say, I mean, honestly, this is, I want to share this because I think I think anybody that I've ever spoken with probably gets this more than anything. There's a deep humility that comes with this, because you have to listen and hear what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. And for me, it's not the external, it's the internal, and really paying attention to the internal. And so many times it doesn't seem to make sense on the outside, but it's driven by that internal, right? And
I actually, sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
No, I actually, the moment you said that, I got goosebumps because I kind of resonate with that so much. Because over the last year or so, I mean, I've been pondering this a lot myself. This voice, I mean, I'm not saying a being, but this inner voice that keeps telling me that the words are like the inner is more important than the outer.
Yes.
Because I tend to, just like most people who are analytical, to grasp reality with my mind outside, and like struggle with it and see what's happening and trying to change circumstances, and trying to engineer, maneuver situations to get what I want and things like that. I'm like, this inner voice seems to be telling me none of that matters, because if you take all that attention and focus on the inner, and then the outer will rearrange itself according to the inner.
Yes.
And so that kind of immediately makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, that's I so appreciate that, because and that's been, I don't want to say the hard part, but it's that inner drive of, well, this doesn't make sense. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in my life it's like, well, this doesn't make sense. You're not going to make, can you afford to pay your mortgage this month if you do that? But it's like, it all eventually works out. But at the same time, it's not like you're asked, you can feel that you're here to do things at a certain time, and sometimes they don't make sense, and then you have to deal with the outside world that's going, what are you doing that for, right? It's one of the reasons that I picked up focusing so much on the electromagnetic and the geomagnetic aspects of this planetary shift as it relates to human behavior, because it's the one that was really knocking on my door hard, that said, people need help with this.
Right.
And so, I get up every day really early in the morning. I spend about 2 to 3 hours doing research, and I do a morning report for people so they can get an accurate understanding of what's going on without projection, so they
Right.
can know what's going on with the outside world for sure, but how that's impacting their inner world without somebody projecting what they should be feeling.
And where do you do this? Is that a YouTube channel or a
I
blog?
have, yeah, so I do it two places. I do it on my Substack account.
Okay.
So I give it every day to the subscribers that are there, but I also have it for free for people that just don't want to email. They want to go and do it and find it on their own. And that's like on iTunes and Amazon and a couple of Spotify. So it's in a couple of different places. But that was, the irony with that is I woke up one morning and there was a huge coronal hole and there was all this solar wind that was blowing in. The next thing I know, I literally woke up. I had the title of the podcast, and I'm not a podcaster, I had to like figure out how to do it. The title of the podcast, and I just started doing it like I had done it like 10,000 times. And that started in it was like mid-June, mid-July. I think it was mid-June. And that was it, and that's how it goes sometimes when you're paying attention to those pulses. And I'm not an impulsive person. I'm like a super pragmatic Virgo, so
Right.
it's like it's listening to that, this needs to be done, right? And so you go and do it. But yes, that's one of the reasons that I do that, because I've been noticing that more people are feeling things that they didn't feel previously. And instead of people freaking out, and because when something's new and jarring,
Yeah.
people think, there's a lot of negative attachment to that, as opposed to, hey, we're in a new space right now. You're going to be feeling things that feel a little funky, but let's help to try to make sense of them, right? And realize you're
Right.
not the only one who's feeling this, that you got somebody down the street that's picking it up too. And not
Yeah.
everybody's going to feel it, but more people have been than not.
Yeah. One sense that I also get based on what you said and also from my own understanding is like throw logic out of the window. Like if you think that,
Yes.
how is this going to work out? Like it's none of your business. Just focus on this and it'll come. It'll just arrange itself into whatever, like
Yes.
focus on the what and not the how, almost it'll all just like it may not make sense, like you said, but it will happen.
Yes. I mean, that's been the theory of my life, is like, doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But then it all does. I mean, even, when I started working with emotional intelligence 25 years ago, right? Like, boom, boom, that's come right back into play over these last several years, hard. And, just to share with you, I ended up teaching a class recently at Ubiquity University where it was called The Intelligence of Emotion and Plasma. So I was able to take the emotional intelligence and bring that into the day-to-day intuitive intelligence and plasma intelligence, so people can understand and make sense as they're starting to see more of these subtle realms, because they're starting to see more of these subtle realms, probably because of some of these changes, right, electro and geomagnetically, and to try to find a way to make sense of this for themselves.
Right. That's another point that I'll probably touch upon a little later, this plasma and plasma intelligence. But going back to, well, the experience itself,
Sure.
you said, okay, first of all, you said that you remember your previous incarnations, for example, and then you remember the time when you were with the source.
Hmm.
And so maybe I know it's like some of these things are like not easily, verbalized, but what does it mean to be with the, how does it feel to be, well, I'm assuming for most people that translates to God, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So what was it like? What is that? What is that memory like?
Um, awesome. It was awesome. I mean, it was, it's like, it's absolute love, it's absolute joy, it's absolute ecstasy, and you feel this divine spark is an understatement. You just feel this constant divinity, this constant, divine spark is just, it's just all there all the time. And, of course it's all knowing. It has to also do with all the planets. It has to do with all the galaxies. It has to do with everything. It's everything. And it's light, right? Like it's light. Um, and that's what I remember. And and love, of course, like the love was so innate. And that's, I think, one of the things that, when I'm doing this, right, like that's me with source, and then coming in and incarnating in through and weaving that through into my physical body. Like when I do want to share this because I've shared this a couple times before, but it's so important. So when I actually got into my mom's womb, and I don't remember, I remember being energy in the corner of my parents' bedroom. And the next thing I remember, I was in her womb. And I think I was probably like 7 months in utero, because I could feel like the density of my body was bigger. And I knew she was standing in the kitchen. I could see it, how, I don't know, but I could see it. And I could hear, I was the youngest of five in my family, and I could hear my brothers. And my brothers were like typical, like seriously, like serious boys. And I was like, ugh, oh no, not this place again. Like God's honest truth, right? And I remember the density, and like I had remembered density on Earth somehow,
Mm.
right? Like in my body. Once I got a body, I was now remembering density. Like it was coming back, and I thought, oh no, not this place again. Like, oh my God. But I remember I also kind of like rolled my eyes in utero, like, oh, of course, like kind of like laugh and deal with it. And
Yeah.
and so it's been that for me most of my life. This It's not even a memory of source. There's a connection to source that's so innate, as long as long as I don't allow life to block me from it, if that makes sense. And even
Right.
when I was a kid, I would go and hide in my closet, because we had a small house growing up, and a lot of siblings and chaos, and um, my sanity was hiding in my closet, putting tons of clothes over myself to make myself like invisible, so I could just tune in to source and stabilize my central nervous system for real. And so when you say, what's it like being with source? For me, uh, it's that place that we go to come back to that center point of love within ourselves, right? And
Right.
I've been blessed because that's something that has been innate, that I was able to take with me. But I will say, there's times I fell off the course. Not
Right.
hard, but in retrospect. But I mean, I even remember one point just sharing with you that I said to the, God, the beings, I don't know, I said, I just want to be a normal human being. I want to go out and like have a drink, or like do things that all these other people are doing, And and I did. And for a period of time, very short period of time, but it took me the little bit of time that I did that, it took me like 6 times the amount of like years to get
Right.
back to where I used to be spiritually. And so,
Wow.
yeah. So, there's this, yeah. So there, when people talk about getting, back to your spirit, or getting back to hearing source, whatever, is a lot of work, and it can be, I can attest to that, because I said, I just want to be like, let me fall into density. I didn't know that's what I
Yeah.
was doing. I just wanted to be like everybody else. I didn't want to have to be so good all the time. I know that sounds strange, but I just wanted to have fun and be okay, like laugh and go to a bar, and like I did
Yeah.
for probably about 6 months, but it took me a good 3 to 4 years to get back to a much better level, and then it's been climbing since then. I say climbing, opening up that space.
But related to this is something I feel like sharing is what I've read and understood from the masters of non-duality here in India, with Advaita, and people who, from the tradition of non-duality. Somebody once said that, like, your connection to the source or to the one or God or whatever is almost like a rubber band. Like,
Hmm.
it's the most natural state, and it's not something that you have to like climb yourself or dig to. All you have to do is relax and let go, and you will just invariably find the mark. It'll go back to it. It's just that we
Yeah.
sort of, I mean, it's easy for me to say I'm the most mental and analytical person ever, but then I also recognize this truth somewhere in my being. But then I have two questions. So one, when you said you came down to density, was there a
Yeah.
sense of sadness and loss?
No.
Okay.
No, no, it was humor. It was humor, as if like, oh, okay, No, not at all. There was no sadness, there was no loss. There was excitement of what is this? Like, what is this? And I can still feel it, in my being now, is I get to carry this divine spark, right? Like I get to carry that. And as long as I remember that, and as long as I create that space in myself, it's not every day is not like this, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
but I feel it more often than not, and then learning to give myself permission to feel it more often than not, right? Because things like guilt come in, things like for me, it's should I be doing more for others? That's always, been a thing. And I grew up with a family that had a lot of illness and disease, so it's something that I've had to really manage. But no, I did not have sadness, and I did not have loss.
And what do you think, from your vantage point, with access to this intelligence, what do you think is preventing everybody else from doing the same thing? Like, why aren't other people remembering this? Because obviously everybody comes from the source,
Yeah.
right? Is it
Well,
because they are too enmeshed, or is it like too, is it the karma, or what do you think?
Well, I've wondered that, because I always say I'm nothing special, and I don't say that to be intentionally humble. I believe that what has, like you brought the point about, that if we just allow and let go, then it doesn't have to be like this either or. And it took me a while from a maturing standpoint to get to that space, right? Like this non-duality, like it's taken me a while to get there, and not up here. I mean, the whole me, right? Um, and I think that I do believe in my heart of hearts that everybody has the capacity to feel this. There's no doubt. And that's one of the reasons that I am excited to be in a body and be here, because I think if you can, it's like if you see something really beautiful, okay, that's great that you see it, but don't you want the person that you're really close to, or
Yeah.
someone else, to be able to see something beautiful too? It just amplifies it, right? And so I really do believe that everybody can. What prevents it? I think there's a level of density that we may carry within us just on a day-to-day basis, right? The heart aspect, the love, the self-love. If you do love yourself, it's a lot easier for you to love somebody else. It's a lot
Mm.
for genuine love. And I do think that past past schisms, past karmas, absolutely has something to do with that, for sure. And like when I look at, I'm someone who's here to be of service. And I don't, again, these are not just words. When I look at all of the lifetimes that I remember, it's always of service, but it's not, it's of service with the earth. It's of service. You're helping me, like, even with my own words. It's service for the evolution of even the cosmos. The cosmos evolves. It
Mm.
moves. It's not like these just fixed places in time. It's a dynamic process. And I feel like I've always, like, whatever I am is always part of this dynamic process. So I think that everybody can get to this space and place. And I think that these energies that we're experiencing, when you think about it, like, some of us are experiencing this compression, but that compression to then, give way to this expansion. And if we can go through this compression, then we can experience the expansion as well. And that expansion is the subtle realms are really vast and many.
These beings, for example, who come from the other like the experience of these other realms and the beings, I know that you've had continuing contact throughout your life, which and so what so would they be like the classical contactee experience with interdimensional beings, would you call them, or would you frame them as like angels, or in religious terms or spiritual terms? Well, like what
Yeah.
are they? What are these beings? And like, can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about these, maybe one or two of these
Sure.
episodes, if you want to call them that?
Sure. Well, when I was a kid, like really young, it was like I knew I had my physical Earth family, and I was always like, well, where's the other beings that I experienced before I incarnated in? So I was always waiting. So even, as a little person, I'm like, okay, well, here's the matter realm, here's the earthly realm, uh, and where's the other one? And it's not other meaning separate. It's like a spectrum of light, density to light. And so I always had that flap open as a kid, and I'd say, now it's back open, to this subtle realm. And so when the beings came, that my first conscious memory, and by the way, I had seen something else prior that people would consider related to God. So I saw that when I was younger. I struggled with the density because I think it's important to frame it. I struggled with the density here on Earth. Like there was a real heavy density that felt like I felt like I was getting pulled down, and I was always trying to like pull myself up. And I remember asking for help, like as a toddler, and saw, what appeared to be Jesus in the sky. Now, we weren't religious, so I didn't even know a picture of what Jesus looked like when I was a kid. And I wouldn't have said, oh, that looks like Jesus because it was a face. No, it was like it was like in the clouds, and I just knew it was this incredible being that had the qualities of what Jesus would have, right? And I didn't even know that that was Jesus, and maybe it wasn't, but that was the type of characteristic. And I share that because that was actually my first memory of seeing a being before seeing these other beings. And yes, they had a ship. But it was a light ship. It wasn't a ship that looked like something out of like Lockheed Martin. It wasn't like that. This looks really beautiful, really dynamic, and you knew that it was quasi material, but mostly light. And so I saw that when I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, and I saw the beings. And when I didn't see them before I could feel them. I could feel them first, and I felt like this magnetic pull / activation. And as my sister saw them as well. And my sister was not having the same reaction that I was. My sister was quite in awe, but also slightly panicked. And I couldn't verbalize anything at the moment, but I'm like, calm down, like I knew what it was, but I couldn't verbalize that as a young person. And yes, so I did see the ship, but the ship, it's not like they came out of the ship. To me, their energy combined was the ship. And somehow, call it a self-organizing process. I don't know. I don't claim to understand how all of that works at that level. I feel like I only understand a fraction of it, but they were luminous beings, and there was 9 of them. And I interacted with them, and one in particular. And when I interacted with them, I just felt that physical sensation of love. Now, I had felt love prior with my family, but this was an activation of love, just a bit of a deeper way that helped me in my physical body here on Earth, if that makes sense.
I was trying to understand when you say ship, Did it
Yep.
have a shape and a form and a structure, even though it was made of light, or was it just like a
Yeah.
blob of light? Or
No, it wasn't a blob of light. It was definitely very organized and coherent. If I'm looking down, because I'm trying to, I remember these things really clearly, and it was, there was I remember it made a noise. It was like a whoo, like a hum, very, very gentle, very, very subtle, very beautiful, actually. And it was right above a treetop of my house, right in the backyard. And I could tell that there was a rotation clockwise on the top and a counter rotation on the bottom. And the lights were, there was a clearer light on top, like glowing. It wasn't like it's not like a physical light like you have in your house. And then there was a light on the bottom, but it had red and yellow and blue and green, and just the colors, the vibrancy of the colors were, really similar to what you'd see with a rainbow. I saw one yesterday, so and it really, it was very earthy colors.
right.
Even with the auroras, we look at the auroras that we've had here, in the last week, at least we've had so many in the United States. It's that type of vibrancy that I can now say, because of seeing auroras in person.
Yeah.
So that's what it looked like. But I knew, how did I know this? And I will give you a picture. I'll send it to you so you can see. So the configuration of the beings, when I would see them move, they moved, in a coherent pattern, and it looked the shape of a like two triangles. So there was 9 of them. And if you actually look at that, because I used to draw all the time as a kid after the experience, it looks like a ship, like the shape, when you think about two
Mm.
triangles on, one another, and 9. And like I said, I'll send you the picture so you can see it. But my sense was, they were the ship. It wasn't, and that maybe defy some form of physics and logic here, but that was the experience. And I've seen, different things since, and different experiences with different beings since. It didn't stay the same.
Did you get a sense of where they come from? I know that traditional definitions of space and distance and time kind of break down when you talk about these things, but
Yeah.
still, the position that you were in, embodied in, as a kid, did you have a sense of them coming from outer space or from this like a different dimension? Like what was your
Mm.
understanding of where they were from? And you said many different experiences like this over time, but different beings. And are they
Yep.
all from different places on in the universe or different levels of like where do we place them,
Yeah.
locationally?
The sense that I got with the beings when I was the one experience that I just shared with you, that did happen multiple times, at that age, was that this was part of, if you think about it, like my energy, my energy body, right, leaving source, in coming in, that they were connected to that, because I saw beings that looked like them before I incarnated in, when I was with source. So I saw these golden luminous beings working on, I'd say again, on behalf of source, with source. And so when they came through this shared reality, right, it was them in their light form, but just enough physical form to have connection with my physical form. And so, are they working on, not working, are they coming here on behalf of source? I think so. I mean, the ones I've experienced, I can say that very much felt like source energy. And yeah, so it was a share. I want to share this too. It was a shared space. Like, it wasn't my physical reality then, to like this envelope, right? It
Right.
was as if time and space shifted. So as this, think about it, so I'm laying in bed, I can feel them coming. I could feel it, and I knew it, and innately knew it was them. It wasn't like, oh, I see something outside and then I had this experience. It's not like, for me, it wasn't like that. I could feel the cells of my body begin to like magnetize and vibrate, and I felt everything in me open up. The space between the spaces of my physical density opened up. And it was weird, I'm not going to lie. It was weird. As a kid, I'm like, whoa. um, but I innately knew it was them. Like, innately knew that there was more
Mm.
than one, innately knew that this was part of my primordial connection. And, um, and that, it wasn't easy because it was a large amount of energy to handle at that moment in my physical body. However, there was a knowing and what felt like a reconnection as well. And I will say this, it seemed like that physical connection for some reason was necessary for me to carry through that feeling of love in my body. And somehow they were an activator for that.
Just to come back to that point about the diversity of beings, is it like
Mhm.
each time there was different? I was just wondering what causes this diversity. Do they inhabit different worlds, different realms, different layers
Yeah.
relative to each other, or?
Yeah. I mean, I can say this. So the beings that I experienced as a kid, I felt like those were here to check on me, make sure I was okay, make sure I had what I needed in ways that I don't even consciously understand. I'll be totally honest with you. Um, and the need for that physical slash energetic contact was very important, and they had to work really fast. Now, we didn't there's a part that we haven't addressed yet that I'll talk about in a minute because I'll answer your question, but they needed to work really fast. And I always thought that was really weird. I'm like, whoa, what's the um but when I got older, I had these the only way I can describe it is they're creator beings, because these are the ones that were showing me, I mean, literally like taking me, and the next thing I know is I am being zipped through the cosmos. And it's fun, it's awesome, it's fabulous. And it happened when I was 21 years old, and then it happened again when I was in my early 30s. And again, I worked with Dr. Rudy Shield on all of this stuff. I found him shortly thereafterwards, and I was so shy to explain anything. Like, I was like, I was super shy, super quiet, and never talked about any of these things until I got a little older. But they were these very tall beings that came in, and they're looking at me, and they're looking at me like as if I'm in my bed. They're at the foot of the bed, okay. And my daughter's father at the time, we weren't married yet, was with me, and so he can attest to part of this experience because he was knocked out very soon after. He couldn't handle the energy, and that's what happened. But these two beings, very tall, and I couldn't really see their faces so clear, but they were looking at me as if they knew me better than I knew myself. And
Hmm.
I remember thinking, what are they looking at? Right? Like, and I just was like, wait a minute, they knew me better than I knew myself. The next thing I know, I have one on my left and one on my right, and we're zipping through the cosmos. And I'm screaming in joy. I'm like, woo! I mean, it sounds silly, but this is the truth. And the next thing I know is they take me to what looks like, if you've ever seen a picture of like a nebula, all right,
Mm-hmm.
like this formation of something new in space, and they said your scientists have the Big Bang wrong, and and they said, you have your Milky Way system, this is ours, right? And when they said ours, and it was all telepathic, but I could still feel one to my left, one to my right, and there was two beings that came in the room when I was in my bed, um, and they showed me what looked like this new universe, right? Like, this was like
Mm.
a budding new universe. And so I don't remember any of that stuff pre incarnation. But what I understood it took me ages to figure this out over years, is that, the cosmos evolves, the universe evolves. There's life force that is connected to us. We think it's all going on Earth, but there's so much that life that's in the universe that's growing and evolving. And, maybe pieces and parts of us are in these different spaces and places. And that's what I got. And there's more to this than that, because I came back and showed me the evolution of this place and in my role with it, which is, I would say a bridge, a connection point, a bridge. But yeah, I would say that those were creator beings because they were showing me creation. And it was, one in which that it was so different. I didn't like, you're like, where do you put that? What do you do with that? And maybe you don't do anything. Maybe you just accept the isness of it, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel like these are states that are easily accessible to you even now? Like, can you traverse these, go to these dimensions or these regions by yourself? Are you like in constant communication, the two-way communication with these beings? Can you like talk to them and get answers or things like this? Or
Yes and no. When it comes, it comes. And I've learned that don't have attachment. I would say all of the spiritual principles that you and I probably both know are totally true as it relates to all of this stuff. Don't have attachment. Work on yourself. Work on your anger, frustration, fear. Increase love. Like all of that is super important. And to not have an attachment to them, not have an attachment to uh, being in these places, seeing these beings. It's one of the reasons, I know that a lot of contactees will say, oh, I can help you make contact. That's not my role here. In terms of, I don't want to say helping people make contact. I can help with certain things, but I don't go out there with a camera. That's not, would you go take a picture of like a spiritual leader, or, would you do something like, like that? And I'm not saying they're spiritual leaders. I'm just trying to put it in a context that makes sense. I used to try to do that, when I was struggling, like if I was going through something hard, and they didn't show up, right?
yeah.
And honestly, when I was a kid in elementary school, in junior high school, I thought, well, maybe they'll give me answers for a test, right? That didn't work out. I get F after F. So it was like, it's like you have a brain, learn how to use it, and that's the truth. And so I figured out how to do that part because that wasn't innate, to be totally honest with you. I thought everything was all intuitive because I used to even talk to my parents like telepathically until they didn't answer. I'm like, what's wrong with you? So no, like I've had to learn to be very earthen, and to ground that. And I trust the contact comes when it needs to.
Right.
And I trust that I can be heard whenever I need to be heard. And if it's meant to be acted upon, okay. But I trust that their intelligence, that their sentience is very aware of what's going on with me. That's what I trust. And I will tell you this, there's times that it's also a surprise when I see them. And what I mean by that is, like, I'll give you a quick example. My dad had passed away, and I was really close to my father. And I had come back to the house, and I was by myself. And I, grew up with a large family, so I was alone quite a bit after he passed. And I remember I was making like something terrible to eat, like mac and cheese. Like, I'm a good cook, so I just didn't feel like cooking, right? And I was kind of depressed. And the next thing I know is I hear, and it's not a voice, but I hear something that says, "Go outside."
Mm.
And I'm thinking, whoa, what's that? And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do this because I don't want to be disappointed if some, because I was lonely. I was lonely at that point. And if something happened, if nothing was there, then what does that mean? Right. And so I remembered, kind of like use my mind to say, okay, well, what is the feeling that you felt in your heart when you heard that voice? Like in the split second, I'm, having my mind talk to my heart here. Right. And my heart said it felt good when that happened. So just go with that feel good feeling. So I step outside, I look out on my back deck. I'm at my dad's house. And the next thing I know is I see this beautiful, beautiful ship in the sky, and it's pink. I never saw pink, right? And immediately, I start crying because I'm like, I can feel my dad. And so, it's like the brain wants to know, was it DTs? Was it my dad? Like, it doesn't matter, right? Like it's the feeling of love, and that I can't tell you how many times that's happened, what I call the surprise. And the lesson is continually like this space in our heart where there's not that opposition, the space in our heart that there's alignment, the space in our heart that has that center point, that's really dynamic and connective. And that has been the continued lesson to all of this. And one of the things I want to share, because you said something about the beings and can you go back to these places? So Dr. Rudy Shield is awesome. He's was a Harvard astrophysicist. He's since retired. And he listened to people like me, meaning there's other people that have these experiences. And he started to call when you get these beings that take you to these different places in the cosmos. He called it a conscious quantum highway. And he said that, because I said to him, I said, well, Rudy, how is it that I can go back to these places? I feel like part of me is still there. Like I can easily go back and think about this new universe, if that's what it was. I could go back and think about these places and like I'm physically there. He goes, well, that's part of that conscious quantum highway. He said the beings create this activation that brings us to these, points in time. And is that for our future? I don't know. But that's one of the things that he's actually studied. And I want to share that because he's one of the brave people that really, went on a limb for people like me and others because he knew that there was validity to what we were saying.
Right. It's almost like infrastructure development. There's somebody laid a new road, and now you can use that whenever you want to go come and back.
Yeah, yeah. And perhaps, you know what? Perhaps it's to help other people get to these places and spaces. And I know the indigenous talked about the Milky Way system as being like a highway for souls. I didn't know that, until I was doing some studying on these things, right? Like, so, I would it just kind of, I think, goes to show, I think part of this conversation is, we're in a bunch of different places here. And to maybe not freak out so much on Earth because, we are in different spaces and places, and right now what's connecting you and I and others is our body here on this planet, right?
Right. I just want to quickly share one point, and then I'll move on to that next topic. Is you mentioned the feeling of love, because now this is not a thing that I've had, well, frustratingly and disappointingly never experienced myself, these beings, but then I have always come into contact with friends and other people, and I get the same message through them, that the existence of these worlds and these beings, and they always relate to me. Like there was one guy who, similar to you, he didn't want to be on camera, who had these repeated experiences, and he said he was on a mountain or somewhere in nature, and he started seeing this being in front of him. It slowly appeared, and he says that any sign of fear or anger or anything other than love you feel, and they go away. But when at the moment there is a sense of love and acceptance, he said these glowing orbs that he sees sort of expand and expand and expand, and until the presence comes in front of him. And there was this one time where he said he could feel that it was kind of a feminine in essence, like it was like a feminine thing, and he could tell that it was like a really high dimension being, and it asked his permission to come into his field, and he said yes. And apparently, when it sort of merged with him, he felt immense love. It's like every single cell of his being was shimmering with light and love. And this kind of and I've had similar descriptions from a couple of other people who have had these experiences. So, which always leads me to question, how isn't there a limit to what the embodied human body can take? Like any emotion, of course, like anger and even love, if it's extremely intense.
Yes.
It's like your body could short circuit, right? Your nervous system, you may not be ready for it.
Yes. Yes. I think you're totally right on that. And that's why it's like, what do they say too, even with looking at like psychotropic medicine, right? Like it's not the actual medicine, but it's like knowing that dosage of it. And I guess that's any medicine. So I think that there is this sense of what can you handle, and this conversation I just had with this gentleman. He runs this organization called the New Dawn Institute, and he was sharing about his conversation with these Mayan elders. Is that we have to actually learn how to handle the frequency of love on the planet. That's actually what's shifting, is the frequency of the earth is shifting. And I don't, say that just spiritually. Like my PhD, one of my PhD advisors is the guy that like does the Schumann resonance, for the earth. And it does appear that that is shifting, right? And our capacity to embody that and handle that, so what may look like it's, things are all cracking and breaking apart, is I think part of that is that entropic process, but being able to handle that love. Yeah, I mean, one of the beings, by the way, when I was getting zipped through the cosmos, they which was so interesting. They said to me, because I went to thank them, I went to turn and thank them, and they gently guided my face away, right? Like I was like, because I was so excited, I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, whoa, and they tap, like, it was like just like this. They said, they said, they go, you always get too scared when you see us. And I'm thinking, probably because whatever they look like, right? But the sense was they wanted me to remember what I was seeing. Okay. And maybe, I don't know, who knows, their faces were just light. I don't know. But they really wanted me to remember what I was seeing. So I think they gave me what I could handle to then take it back to be able to embody that experience, right? And to integrate it into my day-to-day world. But yeah, and what's the difference between someone that has these experiences? Like I've had, like I said, family member that had these experiences with me, and my experience was very different than the other family member's experience. Not too different, but certainly not this more full embrace of love. And the only difference, they were same beings, right? The only major difference is that I remembered my incarnation. I came in with that, that connection to source. And I think that's part of what I think being asked to come back to. And we can even talk about, well, what does that mean? Like, galactically and with the sun and with this and that. It does appear that we are in greater times of greater connectivity with our earth, the sun, with each other on the planet, and also with our galaxy.
Right. But then one thing that's really nagging me is you have this experience on one end of the spectrum, and then I'm hearing about
Mm.
the grays and the
Yeah,
alien
yeah,
abductions and the cattle
yep,
mutilations and
yeah,
and the negative and the dark side of this, and
yeah,
and
yes,
people feeding on human energy and dark stuff, and like
yep.
it kind of gets into sort of dark realms.
Yes,
So
yeah, that's okay.
is
Yeah.
that real, or is that just a psyop, or what is that? Like, does that also exist?
Well, I would say it does exist. I haven't met, I mean, let me back up. I'd say it does exist. The why is the important thing. So I also study and care deeply about human behavior. So when I was part of John Mack's group, when I was in, my early 20s, and I didn't work for him, I was just part of the group at the time, because they were working with people that had contact and trying to make sense of it. Because, it was, again, the early 90s, this was like considered woo and totally taboo, especially a dude at Harvard doing this, right? Like totally taboo. And I didn't understand. There was people I got along with really well that were other contactees, and there was people I just had no like basis of connection with, and it was actually slightly concerned about. And that's when you start to realize not all contact is the same.
Mm.
Not all the beings are the same. And so my eyeballs and my awareness has always not it's always been about the human being and their behavior. It's not about what they say. It's not about what they claim to see or who talks to
Mm.
them. It's about their behavior. And if that behavior doesn't illustrate foundational spiritual principles, then you probably should just ask a couple more questions.
Right.
Like, for example, does that person approach things with love, or are they trying to control another person? Do they have jealousy? Do they have anger? Do they have fear? And it doesn't mean you can't have some of that, right? But I mean, like, how do they treat other people? How do they treat animals? How do they treat the plants? How do they treat? So to me, that's what we pay attention to know, uh, I'd say, the quality of the person and what's happening to them. Now, there are experiences that good people have with some of these beings for whatever reason. I don't know. Could it be based on like their past life? Could it be based on, different spaces and places that they come from in the cosmos that they're connected to? I don't know. It's
Mm.
not been my experience, I can tell you that. And, I'm someone that has also worked very hard to keep evolving spiritually. And, I think that's super important. I think that peace is super important, and to continue to do that and to continue to be a good person, whatever good means. But I will share, I've said this on other interviews. I was taken by the military when I was 7. Um, and they asked about my contact. All right.
Ah.
So the military has known for a very, very long time about people having these connections. And uh, I share that because I spent time with Dr. Edgar Mitchell. He was Apollo 14 astronaut that walked on the moon. And, I got him in a car one day. I had to drive him somewhere. And I asked him, I said, and told him about the military, experience where these military guy picked me up and was asking me all these questions about my contact. And so I said to him, I said, how did they know that, like, I had contact? And he goes, Susan, they've had that technology for a long time. And I'm like, yeah, but this was like the late 70s. I was like a kid, like, and he said, no, no, no. They've had that technology for a long time. So I share that with you because when the military person took me, it was, I would call it a kidnapping. Okay. I'm being polite on your channel. And what they did was horrific. They did something absolutely horrific. And I share that because what is that? Right? Like, what was that? Who decided that was okay to do? There
Mm.
was nothing in any of my contact and any of these other spiritual experiences that I've had. Um, it's all been pro-life. What they did was anti-life. That military, grouping of people, that was anti-life. And, the sense of trying to shut human beings down from their natural connection. And so I think you have some faction on some level that is creating division within a human being, designed to split them, designed to disassociate them. And I think that does exist. And I don't know how pervasive it is, I'll be honest with you. But what I experienced was an attempt at dividing me from, my natural sense of self. It didn't work. And I think it's because I had my natural innate connection that I was born with. And, so that piece didn't work. But the point is, we see it. And I think I can say this if I'm so bold, on your channel. I think we see these large scale operations, if you will, that are designed for human beings to have fear and for human
Mm.
beings to not trust one another, right? To try to fight each other and to try to like find differences constantly with one another, and to have fear and your fellow man is your enemy. Like, who's doing that? What is that? And that's
Yeah.
opposite of everything that I know. But I think it does exist. And is there some faction of some otherworldly beings that are doing this in conjunction with, certain groups here on the planet? I would say probably, but there's a lot of good guys out there too. So,
Yeah, because I was wondering how can military people, like ostensibly maybe human beings, have technology, nuts and bolts technology that can detect visitations like this, and how can they, well, I'm guessing you're talking about Men in Black, right? Like the
yeah,
classical people who go. I'm like, are they
yeah.
even human? Like, how can they know this even? Like,
Yeah,
it's.
I don't know, but what I do know is that what Edgar told me was, and I do trust what he said because he was a humble man. and he had a lot of experience in these areas, was the technology, like what we know that the military has in general, even today, for technology, is nothing in comparison to what they really have. And my husband's a investigative journalist, so we were doing some research one day, and because I had a sense of where they took me, by the way. And so we started looking at released FOIA documents. These are documents that are released on behalf, like somebody can request those from the military to find information.
Is that the Freedom of Information Act under
Yes,
the FO?
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I actually couldn't remember it. I tried, but you did. Thank you. So these FOIA requests, and that had to do with this place that I thought that they had taken me. And it was just for a couple of hours, and it was only once. Um, but we found a smoking gun there, with information that I would say didn't completely substantiate, but came pretty close to it, with activity that was going on and what they had for technology back then. So, yeah, so I think what we know in the public is very small in comparison to what technology does exist with these other factions. And, you know,
Yeah, what bothers me about modern ufology is, ever since I've been following it, is almost 90% of it is focused almost exclusively on this end of the spectrum, about grays and recovered technology and weaponizing it, and
yeah.
national security, and it's like nobody, hardly anyone talks about the other end of the spectrum.
Well, I'll tell you something. I have been on the other end of the spectrum since I was a kid, right? You're not going to hear about people like me getting kidnapped from the military and questions about their contact, and then having some horrific act committed in front of them. You're not going to hear that we were, I was threatened as a 7-year-old, right? Like, where do you put that? Um, and yeah, so like you're not going to hear about that, right? You're not going to hear about and I produce little, I write articles on this. I've watched this entire area be taken over by I call it the military intel version of disclosure, which is nothing what it used to be. And we were followed, a couple of little, I'll call them little war stories, right? When I was 21 years old, we were followed by people, like part of this peer group. We were followed when I lived in Cambridge. I moved out to the city when I was, in my early 20s. And I remember we were followed. But it wasn't just me. All of us talked about it. Our phones were tapped. And so you're like, we're just trying to talk about our contact, with one another in a therapeutic way to make sense of this, right? And here John was writing his book and doing his research. So that stuff started really early on. And also being in the new energy technology arena, I've been in that space. I'm not as active, but I'm still active, a little bit more under the radar than I used to be. But I watched the takeover of that. I know some of the people that are put up on pedestals right now in that arena. They were the ones that were, I don't want to name names, but they were the ones that were going into these different inventors all across the world, taking their IP, taking their technology, and bankrupting them. It's a very dirty arena. It's very dirty with what the public sees versus the reality of how this organically came through. And really in 2017, you started to see the public takeover, what I call the military intel version of disclosure. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is BS. And in my opinion, what they continually try to do is they continually try to put the military intel version as the forefront, and anybody private citizen as you're the you're the lesser, whatever that means. But they always have to step ahead of it. And I think, if I can be so bold, one more thing, I think the people that they do prompt up for contactees are because they are willing to toe a line in some capacity. and not rock the boat too much. But I know what I
Right.
experienced as a kid, and I know even the technology that they used on me as a kid. Like I have a working memory of that. And so, I think you asked a really great question, and hopefully people are not too freaked out with that answer.
Yeah.
But it's the truth. It's the truth. So there is a bit of this war, if you will. I don't like that word, but there is a bit of this war of you know average
Yeah.
people having non-average experiences, and consciousness is really where it's at. To me, it's not about contact, Ramesh.
Right.
It's about consciousness. It's not about
Right.
contact. It's about consciousness. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and I also feel like in the present discourse in the public arena, the people that you see coming out and talking about these military encounters, and I mean again, not naming names, there's so many people
Yeah, yeah,
providing evidence and writing books. I feel like they are like these willing servitors of those who they want to build this narrative. They want to sort of toe the line, like you said, and these are the ones being propped up publicly to sort of
yeah,
craft this certain
yeah,
image of the whole thing.
yeah.
Um, so just quickly moving on to the last section of the conversation, I want to quickly touch upon plasma. I know you mentioned that plasma as intelligence,
Yeah.
and I think that's also something that I've seen a couple of papers that people wrote how like that a plasma could be conscious,
Mhm.
and beings of plasma could be in the upper atmosphere, and there are so many of these new ideas being
Yeah.
floated around by mainstream scientists. So I
Right.
know that you have some opinion on that.
Yeah, so what I started to get an understanding of, and this is a stretch, but work with me on it. So when I was a kid and I had that first shared experience with the beings, I said that it felt like space-time had shifted. And I felt something shift in my body. And that shift, I started to recognize that feeling when the solar energy came in. Like when the solar energy, when I say came in, a good couple of years ago, I started to get the sense that, oh, wait a second. I think that the beings, that experience that I had, that experience of love in this shared space, that because I mean they were plasma in nature. They moved from plasma to physical form, not physical form like you and I, but like imagine like it's loosely packed together, not packed together at all, right?
Right,
So they were
right.
able to move from plasma to density, but not super hard density. And a couple of years ago, I don't know how many years ago now, maybe 6, 7, I started to get the sense that these solar energies that are coming in and impacting our Earth are helping to create that space. All right.
Mm.
So it felt very similar to the contact level experiences that I had. And I said, oh, wait a second. We have to help people begin to understand that these solar energies are not just like, here's the sun doing this thing to the earth and blah, blah, blah. No, this is actually shifting and changing us. It's actually helping us to, open that space between the spaces between ourselves. So I thought, all right, I think we need to start really looking at the world, more looking at the subtle aspect of with the sun and the earth and those dynamic interactions, and being able to help people understand that, because people are seeing more, people are feeling more, and it doesn't sit just in this emotion world, right? Like there's these subtle energies that are, I think, plasma in nature, that are not just coming up in us, but we can see them, and some
Mm.
people can see them. And what's the them? It could be the sentience of what's in the ether, and you're seeing plasma in the ether. It could be someone seeing an orb right in front of them. And so it was being able to help people understand that we've got a fourth state of matter here, and that fourth state is something that we're probably going to be seeing a little bit more. I know some of us already are, not just me, but many other people, people that would never consider themselves spiritual 5 years ago. So
Right.
that's, I'll share that. That's probably a simple explanation of it. And, so much that we know about. Dr. Rudy Shield did publish a fabulous paper. He talked about orbs, and he talked about the plasma nature of orbs as it relates to solar flares and coronal mass ejections, and that there's also an incredible self-organizing principle that comes along with this plasma. And so, we're just, I think, beginning to understand that there's this fourth state of matter that is the foundational aspect of how matter forms. And there's so much to it. It's like kind of like the basis of everything, right?
Could it be like if you think of different dimensions, like higher to lower, like where the lower being the embodied high density 3D, could it
Yes.
be that the plasma is the intervening transitional phase as
Yes.
something comes from there to here and then
Yes.
plasma to solid?
Yes. You got it. That's it. Thank you. Sometimes I overcomplicate it. Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
And remember when I was talking about me with the beings when I was a kid, there was I called it a shared space. To me, that was a plasma to physical interaction. It was just on the line between like light and density. It was right there. Somehow my body shifted and theirs did as well. Mine just shifted enough and theirs just shifted enough. It's
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah.
but I think that's what we're going towards. I think that's what
Right.
this shift on the planet is. I think that's what we're going towards. And, if I can share this as well, I was just doing a little research the other day, and I know that there's this spiritual teacher, Shunya Murti. He's in Costa Rica. There's Terence McKenna, the psychonaut, and then there's Rudolf Steiner. I study Rudolf Steiner. And, all three of them talked about something. They talked about losing memory. They said, basically, and I'm just terrorizing this terribly, like I'm not quoting it properly, but like losing the memory of it's not just memory for memory's sake, but like being able to approach situations in this fresh way, right? We always want to hold on, like from a spiritual standpoint, we always want to hold on to the past, or have our grips into something to hold on, right? And I think about that because there's days that when these solar energies come in, these geomagnetic storms come in, sometimes people will say, I don't even know my name, or I don't even know what day it is, or I feel like I'm in two worlds right now, right? So this is I study this with people, so that's some of the common things that they report. And it just fits with this these experiences of where we're losing memory, or we're losing density a little bit. And are we moving from that Homo sapien to Homo luminous? And are we in this, kind of funky stage right now where it seems like it's all doom and gloom, but the reality is maybe we're letting go of something and we just can't really even understand what the new looks like yet, right?
Right. Two points come to my mind. One is you mentioned Rudolf Steiner. I'm a huge fan of Rudolf Steiner myself because
Yeah.
I was really influenced by his idea of the heart, how the heart is not a pump, and the heart is how this vortex that like it's impossible for the heart to as a pump to to send the blood to every single capillary. He says it is impossible. So I love that model of the heart,
Yes.
and this point that you made about like the Homo luminous, for example. So the place that I'm living in Oroville, so this is, okay, it was founded on the principles of human unity. And the founders, one of the main things they said, it's one of the quotes that you'll see here if you ever visit, is
I'd
that
love
humanity is not the last rung of the evolutionary ladder. And obviously we are continuing to evolve into something higher and higher. And it's like this place, for example, I mean, maybe there are other power spots on the globe, was established to receive this higher energy to help human beings ascend to the next level of evolution. Like, and the message that I get is, like, I used to be I teach yoga, and I used to be a huge renunciate, I wanted to like go to the mountains, to the Himalayas and sit in a cave and meditate. But then the message that keeps coming to me also is that the age of renunciation is gone, and now it's the age of being amongst people and building community and taking everybody with me together, because nobody ascends until all of us ascends.
Yes. Yes. Yes, and that, you know what, and that's what the beings, one of the things that they did when I took me to this new space, call it the new universe, right? They showed me that. They showed me there was like this, it looked like the best way to describe it is like an umbilical cord, from this place to where, like the baby, right? The new universe is the baby. And,
Yeah.
maybe we are currently with our current universe and current earthness is, that's like the mother, right? But there is an umbilical cord. And what I was shown is that as many people as possible, that this is about that. And that's why, I said that, like, earlier on, like, this is of service, but not of service to be of service. It's like, well, just that's what you're supposed to do. Like, this
Right.
is about everybody, you know coming through this space. And Steiner, by the way, so it's a big part of my PhD. One of the things that Steiner talked about, I don't know if you came across this, but he said that perhaps one day, and again, I'm not saying it exactly how he said it, much more eloquent, that the heart could be an involuntary muscle.
Mm.
And when I look at that, and I look at the research with the beyond UFOs, and I look at, this, I'll call it training, that the beings are trying to teach us, right? And we're trying to teach each other, is to be conscious of your heart. Because what if that change from, where we currently are to where we're going requires that consciousness of the heart versus, oh, it's just automatically beating and it's automatically doing its thing. And when I came across that, I was like, you know
What are your tips? Given the connection that you have that many other people don't have, what would you tell people in this time who are confused and who who are like struggling with emotions and things that are coming up? Is it inevitable that everybody is pushed towards this new age, or like what is the attitude one must have in life?
well, okay, so two things on that. I would say, well, I'll start with this one first. In some of the visions that I had as a kid, and I try not to have attachment, but it's one of them that I had, there is no you have to do anything. All right. I saw people that were very happy in what we call the 3D world. That's okay for them. Like if they don't have a desire, don't want to, whatever, that's okay for them. They're moving to where they need to be. Okay. And that's their trajectory. But for those people who get the sense that there's something happening and something going on, and they need to do something with this shift on the planet, it's what I say every day on this like 10-minute report I do every morning. You are designed to be attuned to the earth and cosmos. And so attuning yourself to the earth and attuning yourself to the sun and whatever may be happening cosmologically, you can then, it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, you can hear yourself. When you're
Mm.
attuned, you can hear yourself. And I think that's the tip, is to learn how to hear yourself. And there's a lot of like this, the last 48 hours, or 72 hours, we've had a ton of variability within our field, and we vary with that field. And it's not the most comfortable thing, but at the same time, that's what the earth is doing, right? Like,
Right.
that's what the sun is doing. So if it's rocking us around a little bit, that's part of that friction and part of that change, and it's okay. And so being able to have that dynamic flow, to attune ourselves to the earth and the sun and the cosmos, that's the way through, if you ask me. And that's why, like I say, I'm up early every single day doing this, and my poor husband has to like do all that stuff, all the chores in the morning, because I'm like at the computer. But that's what I know is the way through this.
But
Is
if you
that,
have to write a prescription in a doctor's handwriting, so it may say love, detachment, and I don't know, perseverance, fortitude, or what is
yeah,
hanging in there, whatever,
resilience. And I think
resilience.
building your internal resilience,
Okay.
and to go to the distance, to not also be taken by one big story or another big story. We're going to keep hearing these big distractions and these big stories, and to not be, taken to that, because we only have so much energy in our bodies, like again, during these shifts. And what I learned also with the beyond UFOs research is, you don't want to waste your energy. your central nervous system with the fear, the anger, and especially the fear stuff, the division, that can deplete your energy really fast. So you need to be smart with that and build your resilience. So I don't know if that's prescriptive, but yeah, the courage to ride through these waves, because we're going to have waves.
How long do you think it'll last?
If we look at where the Earth is with the sun in this galactic current sheet, so 2025 to 2050 looks like it may be pretty rocky. But, once we go through some of the initial rockiness, then we can adapt to it a little bit easier. From what I was told, and I'm not a big fan of dates, by the way, but one of the things that I was told from this gentleman working with the Mayan elders, they said really 2027 is going to be a big period of time. Now,
Yeah.
I have no way to verify that. I am just repeating what somebody shared with me. But it looks like 2025 to 2050 is, and that's based on scientifically with this galactic current sheet, that we're going to be experiencing more density. I don't want to say density in the sense that we talk about it, but there's going to be, it looks like more plasma type of density that we could experience. So that can make things pretty interesting on the planet. But yeah, maybe by 2027, we'll see how things are. But
Right.
yeah. So I think we're in for a long ride. How about that? That's what I look at it. Like, my term lately is go the distance. Just be
Right.
prepared that we're going the distance. It's not a short blip.
That's good advice. On that note, I think we'll wrap up today's
Okay.
podcast. I'm sure if we ever find time, I'd love to catch up and talk about so many other points that I made here on my sheet of paper, which we didn't
All
have
right.
find time for.
I so appreciated this. Thank you so much. I was super excited to connect with you and talk to you because I knew that you were going to be coming from all these different angles. So I'm totally would love to do this again because I just appreciate the dialogue. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Bye bye.